My name is Elena Harper. I'm 32, and I used to believe the worst things that could happen to a marriage would announce themselves, like a scream, a slammed door, a suitcase dragged down the stairs. I was wrong. Sometimes the end shows up in a calm voice, while the cartoons are still playing in the next room. I'm an operations manager at a mid-sized logistics company in Michigan. Nothing glamorous, but steady pay, decent benefits, and the kind of work that forces you to stay sharp. I've been with the same firm 8 years, started on the warehouse floor, loading trucks at 5 a.m., and worked my way up because I didn't miss shifts and I didn't make excuses. When you mess up a load, trucks sit idle, thousands per hour. That kind of pressure either breaks you or teaches you accountability. It taught me to double check everything, communicate clearly, and own my mistakes. Those habits didn't just follow me into my career. They followed me into my marriage. My husband Ryan is 30. We'd been married 6 years after dating for 2. We had 3 kids, Emma, our 5-year-old daughter, and twin boys, Jack and Lucas, who just turned 3. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We lived in a standard suburban 3-bedroom ranch built in the 80s. When we bought it 5 years ago, it was outdated. Carpet that smelled like old dust, a kitchen trapped in another decade, and a bathroom that looked like it had survived the Brady Bunch. I renovated it slowly on weekends, ripped up carpet, laid laminate flooring, retiled the bathroom, built a deck in the backyard with my own hands, the kind of deck you stand on in summer with a cheap beer and think, this is stability. This is what I built. Ryan worked part-time as a dental hygienist at a clinic 10 minutes away, 3 days a week. Flexible hours, about 25 grand a year. It helped with groceries and utilities, but I covered the mortgage, car insurance, and the big bills. We split the house stuff pretty evenly. I handled yard work and car maintenance. He managed grocery shopping and meal planning. Weekends were Emma's soccer practices, playground visits with the twins, and constant negotiations with 3 tiny humans who seemed determined to destroy the house faster than I could fix it. I loved that life. I loved the ordinary. My best friend Tyler has known me since college. He works in IT for an insurance company and has zero filter. Tyler's the guy who shows up with tools instead of advice. When I built the deck, he spent 3 weekends measuring boards with me, sweating through his shirt and never once complaining. He'd been through his own relationship disaster. His ex-fiancée wiped their joint account and ran off with some guy she met online. It made him cynical, sure, but it also made him the one person who always warned me to protect myself legally and financially. I didn't realize how soon I'd need that warning. The nightmare started last spring when Ryan's twin sister Nina dropped a bomb into our living room. Nina and her husband Brandon had been trying to have kids for years. IVF rounds, tens of thousands in bills. Hope, then heartbreak, on repeat. The medical explanation changed depending on who you asked, but the end result was always the same. Nina couldn't carry to term. Their doctor suggested surrogacy, and that's when Ryan decided I would do it. Not we should talk about it. Not would you consider it? Decided. Past tense. I came home from work one Thursday in March, exhausted after a shipment got sent to the wrong state. The customer was furious, my boss was breathing down my neck, and I'd spent 4 hours on the phone trying to coordinate a correction that would cost us a fortune in expedited freight. The kids were in the living room, sticky and loud, glued to cartoons. Ryan was on the couch scrolling his phone like the world wasn't on fire. I grabbed leftover meatloaf from the fridge and sat beside him, still wearing my work shoes. "How was your day?" he asked without looking up. "Long," I said, taking a bite that tasted like cardboard. Had to reroute an entire truckload because someone transposed 2 digits in a zip code. Customer threatened to cancel their account. I swallowed, forced the question back. "How about you?" That's when he set his phone down with a look I recognized. Nervous, defiant. The same face he made once when he bought a $400 handbag without mentioning it. The same face he made when he signed us up to host Thanksgiving for both families like it was a cute surprise. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. My stomach dropped on instinct. That exact sentence never led anywhere good. He inhaled like he was about to jump off a cliff. "Nina and Brandon asked us about surrogacy," he said quickly, and I told them yes. I stopped chewing. "Excuse me?" He rushed ahead like speed could make it reasonable. "Nina's eggs are viable. Brandon's, they can do it through IVF. It's their baby. You'd just be the carrier." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but his face stayed deadly serious. "You said yes," I repeated slowly. "To me, getting pregnant. with another couple's embryo, without asking me. His jaw tightened. I knew you'd react like this. No, I said. My voice came out quieter than it should have, which scared me more. You didn't know I'd react like this. You didn't care. You just made the decision and assumed I'd, fall into line? His eyes flashed. It's family, Elena. Nina has been devastated for years. I can't just watch her fall apart. And I'm your wife, I snapped, then caught myself because Emma's laughter floated in from the next room. I'm the mother of your 3 children. Doesn't that count for anything? Of course it does, he said, like he was soothing a child. But this doesn't change anything. It's a 9-month commitment. Then the baby goes to Nina and Brandon. That's it. My hands curled into fists in my lap. This isn't like getting a haircut, I said. This isn't like deciding we need new curtains. This is my body, my health, my marriage, our kids, our finances. His expression hardened. It's your body, Elena, your choice. But I'm telling you what the right choice is. That sentence hit me like a slap, because it sounded like freedom, but it was control dressed up in moral language. When exactly were you planning to discuss this with me? I asked. I'm discussing it now, he shot back. No, I said. You're informing me. There's a difference. He crossed his arms. I already scheduled the first appointment, the clinic consultation. Nina's counting on us. I felt cold spread through my chest. You already scheduled... Don't make this ugly, he said, voice tight. If you loved me, you'd do this. And right then, with the cartoon still playing and my kids still laughing in the other room, I realized something terrifying. Ryan wasn't asking me to help his sister. He was asking me to prove I mattered by sacrificing myself. And if I didn't, he was already prepared to punish me for it. That night, I barely slept. I lay beside him, listening to his breathing, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went to the living room, sitting in the dark with the only light coming from the microwave clock. Somewhere deep in my gut, something whispered, check the paperwork. Check everything. Because people who make decisions behind your back, they usually don't stop at one. By Monday, our house felt like it had 2 climates. One side was the life I'd built. School backpacks by the door, toy cars under the couch, the smell of coffee and laundry detergent. The other side was Ryan's new universe. Clinic brochures on the counter, IVF podcasts playing softly from his phone, and Nina's name flashing on the screen like a warning light. He kept acting like we'd already agreed, like my silence was consent. At breakfast, he'd say things like, the consultation is at 3:15, the way you'd remind someone about a dentist cleaning. He'd slide a stack of paperwork toward me, while Jack and Lucas banged spoons on their high chairs, and Emma asked if she could bring cupcakes to class on Friday. I would stare at the papers. Not touch them. Not because I didn't understand what they were, but because I did. Everything about surrogacy is logistics and liability. It's not just 9 months. It's hormones, risk, stress, legal responsibility, medical emergencies, and financial bleed. And I was watching my husband package it into something cute and manageable. A gift. The first real fight after the bomb happened 2 days later. I came home from work to find Ryan in our bathroom, the counter covered in syringes and small vials. He was holding a needle like he'd watched a 2-minute tutorial and decided he was now a nurse. What is that? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He didn't even flinch. Hormones. The clinic said you need to sync your cycle before the transfer. I stood in the doorway, still wearing my badge, still smelling like warehouse dust and stale printer paper. You picked up medication, I said slowly. I already paid for it, he replied. The words already and paid made something in me twist. How much? I asked. Ryan's eyes flicked away. It doesn't matter. It matters, I said. We have 3 kids, a mortgage, groceries, the water heater that's been making that weird clunking sound for 2 months. It's for Nina, he said, as if that was the only explanation I needed. He set the needle down carefully, like the problem was my tone, not the scene. You're acting like I'm doing something evil. I'm acting like my husband is preparing to inject me with hormones for a pregnancy I didn't agree to, I snapped. His jaw tightened. Stop saying you didn't agree. You haven't even tried to understand. Understand what? I said. That you made an appointment, bought medication, signed us up for a process that could put me in the hospital. It's safe, he cut in quickly. People do this all the time. That line again. People do this all the time. As if repetition could erase the betrayal. I stepped closer and stared at the vials. The labels had my name on them. Not Ryan Harper. Not the Harper family. Elena Harper. My body had been reduced to a file. A plan. A vessel. Ryan watched me reading, then softened his voice like he was trying a different tactic. Nina has been through hell, Elena, he said quietly. She cries every time she sees a pregnancy announcement. She avoids baby showers because it destroys her. She's my twin. I can't just watch her break. And I can't just watch you break us, I said. His face hardened again. There it is, he muttered. You're making it about you. It is about me, I hissed. It's literally my body. He threw his hands up. I knew you'd do this. I knew you'd turn it into control and drama. Control, I repeated, almost laughing. Ryan, you're the one deciding what happens to my uterus like you own the deed. He flinched at that, but only for a second. Then he reached for his phone, thumb already moving. Fine. Nina can talk to you. Maybe you'll listen to her. Before I could stop him, he hit speaker. Nina's voice filled our bathroom like perfume, sweet at first, then suffocating. Elena, she said softly. Hi, Ryan told me you're upset. I closed my eyes. Of course he told her. Of course he made me the villain. Nina, I said carefully, I'm not upset that you want a baby. I'm upset that Ryan decided this without me. There was a pause, then a fragile sigh. I didn't mean to cause problems, Nina whispered. I swear, but I'm running out of time. You know that, right? The doctors say... Don't, I cut in, my voice trembling despite my effort. Don't use medical panic as a weapon. Ryan's head snapped toward me, offended on her behalf. Nina's tone shifted instantly, still soft, but sharper underneath. I'm not weaponizing anything, she said. I'm telling the truth. This is my last real chance. I swallowed hard. In the living room, Emma shrieked with laughter at something on TV, the normal noise of children in a normal home. And here I was, in my bathroom, being recruited into a pregnancy I didn't agree to, by a woman who sounded like she'd already planned my role. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said, forcing my voice steady, but you and Ryan should have talked to me before any clinic, before any medication, before anything. Ryan leaned closer, like he could intimidate me into agreement with his presence alone. Nina's voice turned syrupy. He told me you'd be hesitant, but I thought you loved our family. My throat tightened. That word, loved, like love meant obedience. I do love family, I said, quieter now. That's why I'm scared of what this would do to mine. Nina sniffed, a dramatic little sound that landed like a cue. So you're saying no, she whispered. You're saying you'd rather I never have a baby. Ryan's face went red. I stared at the phone as if it was alive. That's not what I said, I snapped. And you know it. Nina's voice sharpened fully now. Then what are you saying? Because I've been trying for years. Years, Elena. I've spent tens of thousands. I've had needles, surgeries, heartbreak. I'm not your solution, I said. My voice was shaking. I'm a person. Silence. Ryan stared at me like I'd just said something unforgivable. Nina spoke again, and her softness was gone. You're being selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I felt my cheeks burn, not from shame, but rage. Selfish, I repeated. Selfish is deciding for someone else and calling it compassion. Ryan snatched the phone and turned speaker off, his movements sharp. Congratulations, he hissed at me. You just broke her heart. I stared at him, breathing hard, feeling something shift inside me. Something that didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like clarity. You did that, I said, when you involved her to guilt me. You did that when you decided my consent didn't matter. He stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. I waited to tell you because I knew you'd react exactly like this. You always have to control the narrative. I laughed once, short, bitter. You waited because you wanted me trapped. That's what this is, Ryan. Timing, pressure, cornering. His eyes flashed. Fine. Say no then. Tell Nina no. But don't expect me to look at you the same afterward. There it was, the threat in plain clothing. I walked out of the bathroom before my kids could hear me cry. I made dinner that night like a robot. Emma asked if I could braid her hair after the bath. Jack smeared peas into his high chair like he was painting. Lucas wanted the same blue cup his brother had and screamed when I handed him the green one. Normal chaos. But I felt like I was underwater. When the kids were asleep, Ryan cornered me in the kitchen. He had his laptop open. More paperwork. More already. The transfer is scheduled for April 15th, he said, like he was reading a calendar reminder. The clinic needs forms signed this week. I stared at the papers. My name was printed everywhere. My age. My blood type. My risk disclosures. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop again. A section labeled Spousal Acknowledgement. Ryan slid the packet closer, watching my face like he was waiting for surrender. I'm not signing anything, I said. His lips tightened. You don't have to sign. It's mostly procedural. My eyes narrowed. If it's procedural, why are you pushing it? He didn't answer fast enough. That was the moment I knew. There was already a lie in motion. Maybe more than one. I went to bed that night next to a man who felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. And at 2:47 a.m., While Ryan slept with one arm flung across the sheets like he owned the entire world, I got up and sat in the dark living room again. I thought about Tyler's ex wiping out his accounts. I thought about the spousal acknowledgement. I thought about Ryan's favorite word, already. Already scheduled. Already paid. Already started. Already decided. And I realized something cold. If Ryan could decide this without me, he could sign without me too. The next morning, I sat in my car outside my office, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And I called Tyler. "Hey," he said instantly. "You sound like hell. What's going on?" I swallowed, staring at the building in front of me like it might offer answers. "Ryan's trying to make me a surrogate for Nina and Brandon," I said, without my consent. There was a long, stunned silence. Then Tyler exhaled hard. "Okay," he said slowly. "That's not normal. That's not family helping family. That's a legal and financial landmine." My throat tightened. "That's what it feels like," I whispered. "Like I'm standing on something that's about to explode and everyone is telling me to smile." Tyler's voice turned firm. "You need to protect yourself, Elena, immediately. Check your accounts, check paperwork, and get legal advice. Today." I closed my eyes. Because deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I just didn't want to accept what it meant. That by the time your spouse starts making decisions about your body behind your back, you're not in a partnership anymore. You're in a hostage situation. I didn't tell Ryan where I was going that afternoon. I said I had a late meeting. That wasn't entirely a lie. It just wasn't with my boss. The law office sat in a squat brick building downtown, the kind you drive past 100 times without noticing. No dramatic glass walls, no marble lobby, just a small plaque by the door and a receptionist who looked like she'd seen every version of heartbreak walk through that entrance. The attorney's name was Angela Ruiz. Tyler's coworker had recommended her after his own divorce imploded, said she was calm, precise, and impossible to manipulate. I needed all three. Angela listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. The surrogacy decision, the already scheduled appointments, the medication purchases, the guilt, the pressure, the way my husband spoke like my body was a resource he managed. She took notes in neat, deliberate strokes. When I finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. "Has your husband shown you the surrogacy contract?" she asked. "Not directly," I said, "just pieces, forms. He says it's procedural." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "Clinics don't do procedural when it comes to surrogacy," she said. "There are liability issues, insurance issues, and in most cases, spousal consent requirements." My pulse ticked louder in my ears. "Consent," I repeated. "Yes," Angela said. "If you're married, many clinics require acknowledgement from both spouses. They don't want a husband or wife contesting responsibility later." A cold wave washed over me. "Meaning," I said slowly, "if paperwork exists, my signature would be on it." Angela nodded. "Or someone else's version of it." My stomach twisted. "Check everything," she said, "immediately. Contracts, financial statements, emails, and don't confront him until you have proof." Proof. That word echoed all the way home. Ryan was at Nina's house when I got back, some kind of planning session. I could see the glow of his car's absence in the driveway like a missing tooth. I waited until the kids were fed, bathed, and asleep. Then I went to our bedroom. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I opened drawers slowly, like I was just looking for socks. Ryan kept most paperwork in his desk. Bank statements, clinic folders, old tax documents shoved together in a way that suggested he didn't expect anyone else to look. I slid the drawer open. There it was, a thick manila envelope with the clinic's logo in the corner. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. The surrogacy contract was longer than I expected. Dense, legal, pages of disclaimers, responsibilities, and financial obligations laid out in merciless black ink. I read every word. Then I reached the signature page. My name was there, printed, and beneath it, a signature, my signature, except it wasn't mine. At first glance, it almost passed. But I know my handwriting. I know the way my E curves sharply before flattening. I know the way I cross my T's slightly left of center. I know the pressure I put on the last letter when I sign fast. The signature was wrong. The slant was off. The loop was hesitant. The confidence wasn't there. Someone had tried to copy my hand. My chest went tight. I flipped back through the document, pulse racing. The signature bound me financially. Medical costs, legal responsibility, insurance implications. It treated me like a willing participant, like I had consented. I hadn't. I took photos with my phone, clear, sharp images of every page, zoomed in on the signatures, captured angles that showed the hesitation in the pen strokes. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, breathing shallow and fast. Ryan hadn't just pressured me. He'd crossed into criminal territory. When he came home later, laughing softly on the phone with Nina, I closed the bedroom door and acted normal. I smiled at his jokes. I listened when he talked about timelines and implantation windows. Inside, something hardened. The next morning, Angela confirmed it. "That's forgery," she said plainly after reviewing the photos. "And fraud." The word felt heavy. "Final. He committed you to a legal and financial agreement without your consent," she continued. "That's serious, and it changes everything." "What do I do?" I asked. Her voice stayed steady. "You document. You don't tip him off, and you prepare." The embryo transfer happened on April 15th. Ryan came home that evening glowing. He gathered the kids in the living room, excitement spilling out of him like he'd just won something. "Aunt Nina's baby is going to grow in Mommy's tummy for a while," he announced. Emma frowned. "Why?" "Because Aunt Nina's tummy doesn't work right," he said cheerfully, "and Mommy's helping her." Emma shrugged and went back to her blocks. Jack and Lucas clapped because everyone else was smiling. I stood in the kitchen doorway and felt nothing. 2 weeks later, Ryan held out a digital pregnancy test in the kitchen like a trophy. "Pregnant," it read. He waited. For tears. For joy. For gratitude. I set my coffee down slowly. "Good for you," I said. His smile collapsed instantly. "That's it?" he demanded. "That's all you have to say?" I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, showed him the signature page. "This," I said quietly, "is not my handwriting." The color drained from his face. "Elena, you forged my signature," I continued. "You committed fraud, and you bound me legally without my consent." He reached for me. "I can explain." "Don't," I said, stepping back. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." The silence that followed was absolute. "But I'm pregnant," he whispered. "You can't leave me now." I looked him dead in the eye. "Not my consent," I said, "not my responsibility." He broke down then. Real tears, real panic. But it was too late. The moment I saw that forged signature, my marriage was already over. Ryan didn't leave that night. Neither did I. We slept in the same house, under the same roof, separated by something thicker than walls. He took the guest room. I stayed in the master bedroom, not because I was claiming territory, but because I refused to be displaced from the life I'd built by someone who had already taken so much without permission. The house turned into divided land. Mornings were silent. We passed each other in the hallway like strangers sharing a bad hotel. Conversations only happened in front of the kids, and even then, only about logistics. "Emma has practice at 4. The twins need more diapers. Pickup is at 6. Nothing else. No apologies that mattered, no accountability, just tension that settled into the walls like mold. On Monday morning, Angela filed for divorce. She submitted everything: the forged contract, the financial records, screenshots of texts where Ryan dismissed my concerns, receipts for hormone treatments purchased without my consent. By noon, she called me. "Now we get ahead of the story," she said, "because he's going to play the victim." She wasn't wrong. Within 48 hours, Ryan's family narrative was everywhere. Pregnant husband abandoned by cold wife. Heartless woman destroys marriage over a selfless act. How could she leave him in his condition? Nina called me 2 days after I filed. I answered because, foolishly, I thought she might finally want the truth. "How can you do this to him?" she demanded. "He's carrying my baby out of love." I closed my eyes. "I hope your baby is healthy," I said calmly. "Truly. But Ryan destroyed our marriage." "You're abandoning him when he needs you most." "No," I corrected. "He abandoned me when he forged my signature." Silence. Then, sharp and venomous, "You're heartless." I laughed once, bitter. "Ask him why he committed fraud, then call me back." She hung up. Brandon showed up at my house that weekend, unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there, hands in his pockets, trying to look authoritative. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't," I replied. "You're putting Ryan under so much stress," he pushed. "That's not good for the baby." I met his eyes, unblinking. "Not my baby, not my responsibility." He scoffed. "You're really going to let your pride destroy your family?" "My pride?" I almost laughed. "Your wife asked my husband to carry your baby. He said yes without asking me. Then he forged my name. That's not pride, that's betrayal." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "He only did that because he knew you'd say no." "So fraud is okay if you assume someone won't agree?" I said. "That's your argument?" He had nothing. Angela advised me to separate finances immediately. I froze joint accounts, opened new ones in my name only, changed every password, banking, email, utilities, insurance, redirected my paycheck. Ryan noticed within days. "You froze the accounts?" he demanded one night, voice shaking. "How am I supposed to pay for anything?" "You should have thought about that before committing us financially without consent," I replied. "But I'm pregnant," he said again, like it was a magic word. "And you made that choice alone," I said. The next 3 months were brutal. Ryan cried, begged, apologized, mostly for how it came across, never for what he actually did. He moved his things out in stages. First clothes, then personal items, then books and decorations. Each box felt like a nail in the coffin of a marriage I didn't choose to end, but had no choice but to bury. Custody arrangements were temporary at first. I had primary physical custody. Ryan got supervised visitation until he could prove stable housing and income. The kids adjusted faster than the adults. Emma asked questions. "Why doesn't Daddy live here?" I knelt down and met her eyes. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that change things. Daddy made a choice I couldn't support, but we both love you. That part doesn't change. She nodded, accepted it, and went back to her dolls. Jack and Lucas barely noticed beyond new routines. Kids are resilient. Adults, not so much. Ryan struggled financially almost immediately. My income had covered about 70% of our life. His part-time job didn't stretch far, especially with pregnancy-related costs. Nina and Brandon weren't as stable as they'd pretended either. Years of IVF had drained them. Credit cards maxed. Loans taken. They couldn't support Ryan the way they'd promised. That's when the messages started. "Can you help with medical bills? Insurance doesn't cover everything. I can't afford groceries this week. The vitamins are expensive." I responded once. "You made a choice. Deal with the consequences." After that, I blocked every number except the co-parenting app Angela recommended. Communication about the kids only. Nothing else. Ryan sent ultrasound photos through the app. I deleted them without opening. I wasn't cruel. I was done. By the time court rolled around, I was exhausted, but ready. Angela presented our case with surgical precision. Timeline, forgery, unilateral decisions, financial misconduct. Ryan's lawyer tried the sympathy angle hard. Pregnant husband, emotional distress, act of love for family. The judge didn't buy it. She looked directly at Ryan. "Did you consult your spouse before making this decision?" "No," he whispered. "Did you forge her signature?" Silence, then a nod. The courtroom felt very still. The ruling came down clean and brutal. Divorce granted. Primary custody to me. Repayment ordered for marital funds spent. And one line that felt like oxygen. I had no legal or financial responsibility for the surrogate baby. Not my child, not my obligation. I walked out of that courtroom free. And Ryan? Ryan was about to learn what it really meant to make a decision alone. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like exhaustion settling into your bones after months of carrying weight you never agreed to lift. The weeks after the ruling were quiet in a way that felt almost unnatural. No shouting, no guilt-laced phone calls, no late-night arguments looping the same accusations. Just logistics, school drop-offs, daycare pickups, soccer schedules taped to the fridge. Life narrowed to what mattered and what didn't. Ryan moved in with his mother. Nina followed soon after. Neither of them could afford rent on their own, and whatever fantasy they'd had about figuring it out together collapsed the moment money stopped appearing from my paycheck. Reality is cruel that way. Ryan tried once more to get to me, not through anger, but desperation. He sent a message through the co-parenting app that technically stayed within the rules. "Can we talk after the kids exchange on Sunday? I just need 5 minutes." I didn't answer. At the Target parking lot where we met for custody exchanges, he looked smaller. Pregnancies had changed his body fast. Swollen ankles, dark circles under his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Nina sat in the passenger seat like a guard dog. When I finished loading Emma's backpack and the twins' overnight bags into my trunk, Ryan stepped closer. "Elena," he said softly, "please." I shut the trunk. "We can talk about the kids through the app," I said evenly. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "I see that now. I thought you'd come around. You thought I'd fold," I cut in. "That's different." Nina opened her door and stepped out, anger radiating off her like heat. "He's carrying my baby," she snapped. "The least you could do is show some compassion." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "I've shown plenty," I said calmly. "I removed myself from a situation I didn't consent to. That's all you ever wanted, me out of the way." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted you gone." I met his gaze. "Then you shouldn't have forged my name." The words landed hard. Nina went quiet. I buckled the kids into their seats, kissed Emma's forehead, and drove away without looking back. The pregnancy moved fast after that. Ryan struggled. Nina and Brandon struggled harder. Newborns are expensive, but pregnancies aren't cheap either, especially when you're uninsured for half the things you assumed would be covered. Bills piled up. Clinic invoices, prenatal visits, medication refills. They tried pushing costs onto each other. Blame bounced between them like a hot stone. And somewhere in the middle of it all, resentment bloomed. Ryan had assumed Nina and Brandon would take care of everything. They assumed I would. When neither happened, the cracks widened. By the 7th month, Ryan looked wrecked. I saw him once more at a custody exchange, leaning heavily against his car while Nina hovered nearby. "Please," he said again, voice breaking. "I can't do this alone." "You're not alone," I replied. "You have Nina, you have Brandon, you have exactly what you chose." He started crying in the parking lot. Real crying. Not manipulation. Just collapse. I felt nothing. That scared me more than anger ever had, because it meant I was past forgiveness. The baby was born 3 weeks after the divorce finalized. A girl. Healthy, loud, alive. Ryan sent a message through the app. "She's here. Everything went okay. Thought you should know." I marked it as read. Archived it. Life moved on. Or at least, I did. Ryan handed the baby over at the hospital as planned. Nina and Brandon took their daughter home with smiles that didn't last long. Postpartum complications hit Nina hard. Blood pressure issues, mandatory bed rest. Brandon's hours got cut at work. They had no savings left. None. They turned to Ryan for help. Free childcare, financial support, night feedings. But Ryan had his own mess to manage. Debt, supervised visitation, rebuilding a life from his mother's spare room. He said no, and Nina turned on him the way she'd turned on me. "You offered to do this," she accused. "You carried her. How can you just walk away?" "I carried your baby," Ryan shot back. "I didn't agree to raise her." The twins, the sisters who'd been inseparable their entire lives, stopped speaking. Their bond shattered under the weight of expectations no one could afford. 6 months later, Ryan sent one final message. Long, rambling, desperate. He apologized properly this time. Admitted the forgery, admitted the manipulation, admitted he thought love meant I'd sacrifice myself quietly. He asked about reconciliation. I responded once. "We're done. Focus on being a good parent during your visitation time. Do not contact me about anything else." And that was it. No rage.
No triumph.
Just boundaries. Because the hardest lesson I learned, love doesn't survive entitlement. And compassion doesn't mean surrender. 6 months passed after the birth. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just steadily. The way time moves when you stop fighting it. My life settled into a new shape, one I never planned, but learned how to live inside. Mornings were calmer. I woke up without dread curling in my chest. I made lunches, signed permission slips, tied shoelaces. I stood on the sidelines at Emma's soccer games again, cheering like nothing had ever broken, because for her, it hadn't. Jack and Lucas grew fast. They always did. 1 week they were tripping over their words. The next they were correcting mine. Children don't wait for adults to heal. They keep going. Ryan didn't. Through the co-parenting app, I could see the edges of his unraveling in clipped messages and late replies. Running late. Need to reschedule. Can't make it this weekend. Always an explanation, never a solution. Nina and Brandon collapsed under the weight of the baby they'd waited years for. Diapers, formula, doctor visits, sleepless nights. A reality they hadn't budgeted for, emotionally or financially. They turned on each other. They turned on Ryan. And eventually, they turned on the truth. Nina accused Ryan of abandoning her once the hard part was over. "You carried her," she screamed, according to what I heard later. "You don't get to just hand her off and disappear." Ryan fired back something raw and broken. "I carried your baby because you asked. I didn't agree to lose my wife, my kids, and my life on top of it." They stopped speaking. Twin sisters who used to share everything, clothes, secrets, childhood beds, now couldn't stand being in the same room. All that closeness, gone. Ryan stayed at his mother's house. One spare bedroom, one dresser, one drawer for things that used to fill a life. His part-time job wasn't enough to climb out of debt. The repayment order from court still hung over him. The supervised visitation requirement embarrassed him more than he ever admitted. He tried harder with the kids. I'll give him that. He showed up when he could. He read to them, played on the floor, apologized to Emma when he snapped from exhaustion. But he never stopped asking me to soften, to bend, to save him from the consequences of his own choices. The final attempt came almost a year after the divorce. It was a long email sent through the app, technically violating every rule it had. He wrote about drowning, about regret, about realizing too late that he mistook entitlement for love. He wrote that Nina barely spoke to him now, that Brandon blamed him, that the baby cried every night and he felt like a stranger in every room. He wrote that losing me was the worst mistake of his life. And then he asked, "Is there any chance we could try again?" I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because I finally felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no longing, just clarity. I typed one reply. "We ended because you decided my consent didn't matter. That's not something you apologize your way out of. I wish you stability, but we are not rebuilding this. Please keep communication limited to the kids." I hit send, and for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel the need to check if he'd replied. Life moved forward. The house filled with new routines, new laughter, new silence that felt peaceful instead of heavy. I stopped questioning whether I was cruel, because cruelty is forcing someone into sacrifice and calling it love. What I did wasn't cruelty. It was self-respect. Ryan made a choice with my body. I made one with my future. And in the end, only one of us understood what that actually cost.